I spent all day waiting for some news out of the winter meetings to talk to you guys about. And the day came and went, but the news never materialized. Welcome to the Dom Skiing Channel, your one stop shop for the Mariners storylines on Seattle's minds. Get a quick thumbnail here. Got the J Rod shirt on, you know. But basically, you know, we spent the entire day waiting for something to really materialize. What we did get is that Jorge Polanco is seeking a 3-year, $40 million deal. We're going to talk about Jorge Polanco and the news that came out today about him because there was quite a few reports. Then we're going to be projecting some prospect capital for a potential Ketel Marte trade. As you guys know, we always start with how many days are there till opening day. So there's 107 days till opening day, at least till the Mariners opening day. 106 days till opening day, which there's one game, I think the day before or something like that. Another team. But our opening day, 107 days away. 73 days till spring training games begin. So winter maintenance day one review, right? Article via MLB Trade Rumors kind of summarized this pretty well, so we're going to read this together. Polanco certainly put himself in position for a more lucrative trip this time around. Ryan Divish of the Seattle Times reports that his representatives pursuing a 3 or 4 year deal that pays upwards of $12 million average annual value per year. That's roughly in line with the 3-year, $42 million prediction, right? Blah, blah, blah. ESPN's Jesse Rogers writes that he could sign during the winter meetings, which obviously, of course, he could sign during the winter meetings. So what does that mean? We're going to get into it. The other news really is that Divish writes that a 3-year guarantee may be beyond the team's comfort zone, however. Makes sense. And we're going to talk about why that is in a second. According to Divish, the club would rather limit the commitment to 2 years, which is what we've been kind of talking about all along. But we're going to get into exactly why that's the number here. And, again, remains to be seen whether any team will meet that ask. The Mariners have spoken openly about the desire to bring Polanco back. So you kind of get the gist. Shout out also to Marine Layer. They had part of this news earlier being in Orlando, as per usual. Seattle Times got the inside scoop. But Marine Layer, being in Orlando, did a video from the winter meetings themselves. And they were saying that, the news of the day was Jorge Polanco wanting this contract and the Mariners kind of negotiating with them. So, the Jesse Rogers report that Polanco is expected to sign during the winter meetings. That's exactly the words that he published on ESPN.com. Are there any other suitors? Because if you're saying he's expected to sign during the winter meetings, that means, there's some options, and one of them, he's going to be able to take one of those deals. But are there any other suitors involved, or is this just the Mariners negotiating with him, and they're expecting that deal is going to get done soon, even though the two sides aren't necessarily seen eye to eye on the contract. So are there any other suitors, and he has other options that he could take, or are the Mariners, because we haven't heard about any of those, or are the Mariners just staying involved, speaking openly about their desire, knowing there's a good chance he'll have to come down to meet us in the middle at 2 years plus an option year. We can afford to throw money around in 2026 and 2027, but 2028 is when Logan Gilbert is up for contract, and he could have a lot of Cy Young votes by then. At that point, he's more expensive. But right now, you don't want to pay market value Dylan Cease money for him to get that extension done, because that's going to be extremely expensive. Anything more on Polo than Logan and Kirby their offer blocking his ideal contract from the M's perspective? No, that's the real holdup. Everything else is auxiliary. The story here is that the Mariners don't want to eat into their time where they're going to have to re-sign Logan Gilbert and after that George Kirby with a Polanco contract or with any contract for that matter. So that's the real news, and that's why they're not going above 2 years plus an option year, which the Mariners are not going to take that option likely, right? Because Polanco will not only will Polanco be older, but even if Polanco is performing well, the Mariners just don't want to pay money at that point when they want to obviously try to retain Gilbert or Kirby. And the only way you possibly do that is by not putting a bunch of money on the books, especially 8-figure contracts to guys in their 30s or to any hitters for that matter. If you get another, somebody who you can build around, then you can start building around them instead. But what they're saying is that they're building around these guys, Logan Gilbert, George Kirby. and they're not going to get rid of him. That's our window. It's with those guys. It's because of those guys, and that's the reason that this Polanco contract can't be more than 2 years. Everything else is auxiliary. The fit with the Mariners, the Mariners, all that stuff, all the baseball stuff is pretty much auxiliary. We kind of have discussed that already, but yeah. Now, so how about the other option, who's more expensive in a different way, which is Ketel Marte. The case for Ketel Marte, he locks up the keystone at second base. He hits like crazy. He's the best offensive second baseman in baseball. He's a natural switch hitter with identical stats versus lefties and righties. His spray chart is pretty even as well, which Edgar, Seitzer, and Magallanes, our hitting coaching staff, would love to get their hands on. I can see them absolutely just seeing Ketel Marte and being like, man, they see him as they see him as an ingredient that they could absolutely cook the right way. I mean, because we're going to talk about this in a minute too. But Polo and him share striking similarities. Anyway, the case against Ketel Marte, he's a bad base runner, 29% in sprint speed, only 10th percentile in base running run value, excuse me. So, in terms of baseball savants metric of how good are you at base running, I mean, 29th percentile sprint speed, right? You're in the bottom third. That's not good. You're not fast. But also, just in terms of base running, he's much, much worse than even just his speed. And you saw when Naylor came over, you saw with Cal stealing bases, how much the team prioritized base running this year. Acquiring Ketel Marte might just be a little bit different to the culture, unless, right, you're unlocking something in him. I mean, with Josh Naylor, they unlocked a whole lot of stolen bases, 30 stolen bases that nobody could have ever really seen in the profile. So unless that's the plan with Ketel Marte, which it doesn't seem like really makes sense. But again, this would just have to be Dan Wilson, the other, coaches, maybe our base running coaches. I don't even know if we have a base running coach. I saw our staff was announced the other day, but I don't know if we have even a base running coach exactly. But it's like, yeah, like are we gonna really unlock something there? Probably not. Don't want to hold up on this too long. He's a bang average fielder. He's 46th percentile in fielding run value in 2025. It's funny because you go 2024, he was like 80-something percentile in fielding run value. Then you go back to years past, and it's like, that slider is moving way up and down. Some years he's a good defender, some years he's a bad defender, but there's no reliability in the glove whatsoever. So you can just call him absolutely average, bang average. It's kind of a soccer term. They say bang average, but I don't know. I guess it's also a term. You kind of get what I mean. Age, he's 32, and you're going to get him on this deal that runs till 2030, where he'll be 37, 30, so he's pretty old. And, if you don't want to acquire the Jorge Polanco contract, yes, Ketel Marte is better, but he's also more expensive. The same problems that we referred to up here. Again, if you shift to Ketel Marte, this is the guy that you'd be kind of building around him, and then knowing that you're risking even harder the ability to sign your starting pitchers that you've developed later on. But you're not going to keep all of them. We've already discussed that, but even keeping one of them. So age definitely plays a role, and then injury issues. He's had injury issues in the past. I was looking this up beforehand. I see a lot of stuff about like ankle injuries, stuff like that. Kind of explain some of the sprint speed and stuff. But also I remember like after he had his big breakout year, I think it was like 2019 or 2020. It was, I think, 2021 or 2022. I kept hearing about this weird shoulder issue. There was something that was messing up his swing. I was looking up shoulder issue. I couldn't find anything. So maybe I was just remembering something that wasn't even there. But there was something that really messed up his swing for a while, and it took a year out of his career. He also takes more like 500, 600 at-bats a year. He's not going to be like Julio taking 700 at-bats a year. He's a guy who, is going to play, you can think he's going to play like 80% of the time, 5 out of the 6 games in a given week. Not, but injury issues are there. He could be a guy who goes on the IL at some point. Obviously, that's a risk with anybody. But this is, a guy in his 30s who might not be getting better, even though he looks like he's just as good as he always has been. and you might not even be available. There's just, you have to look at this stuff, and obviously from the outside looking in, we only know what we know what we don't know, and we don't know what we don't know. But we don't know what we don't know. But you look at the profile. I mean, you look at everything. You see what it is, right? The comp is extremely obvious. It's Jorge Polanco, same age, same size. I mean, literally almost exactly the same size. Switch hitters, similar profiles, same position. Marte seems a better athlete, but it doesn't show up in sprint speed or defense. I mean, we talk about, Polanco is one of the oldest guys for his age that you'll ever see. He's had a bunch of kids. Marte, not sure if he's exactly that old, but has had some weird injury issues in the past. Stuff that, I don't know. There's a lot of striking similarities between Polanco and Marte, two guys who came up kind of as contact hitters and have unlocked, some more power as well. Even somewhat similar stats last year, although Marte way better, more consistent, higher batting average, OBP, results in a higher OPS, right? He's a better version of Jorge Polanco in a way, which fits this team well. But is it something that you really want to build around and sacrifice, the future ability to re-sign Logan Gilbert or George Kirby? If anything, use his deal to justify driving Polanco down. Well, you can't, because if you would try to drive Polanco's deal down, right? Polanco will ask for 4 years if you do that. And I'm talking about Marte's contract here. He's the best second baseman in baseball, but he's getting like $19 million a year. Or even, it's kind of his contract. I haven't even looked at exactly what it is today, so I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's like, it's less than 20 mil, and it ranges between 10 and 20 per year, and it ends up at kind of like 19 per year somehow. Polo's going to ask for 4 years. If you try to talk to him about Marte at all, he's going to be like, hey, well, this guy's going to get paid till he's 37. Give me more years. But we obviously can't do that just based on our situation trying to sign these pitchers in 2 years. We need Polo on a 2-year deal max. And the 2028 option is fine, but we need to give ourselves the option to not take it and have that money on the table to go re-sign Logan Gilbert. So what would we actually have to give up? Let's say we do want to make this Ketel Marte trade. We can afford to spend that money this year and next year. We're going all in. We're getting Ketel Marte. So here's one possible package, right? Cole Young pretty much has to be part of the deal to make the value fit. But the reports are, right, yeah, the Diamondbacks are open to moving him, but they're going to need starting pitching to do so. There's an emphasis on starting pitching, which kind of is similar to what the Cardinals said about Brendan Donovan. Anyway, one of Kate Anderson, Ryan Sloan, Herangelo Saintia, which I'm not sure which one, right? None of us have watched these guys enough to say exactly which one the Mariners are trading, which one the Diamondbacks would be wanting more. But the Diamondbacks definitely have the prospect evaluations of the Mariners done, because, we made 2 deals with them at the trade deadline for Gino Suarez, for Josh Naylor. There's no chance that the Diamondbacks haven't researched these pitchers and scouted these pitchers themselves. So, which one would they want? Which would this deal get it done? That's kind of my question in the comments below today is, do you think that this package gets the Ketel Marte trade done? One of these pitchers and Cole Young. Because if it does, then you might have something here. And it could even happen this week. And now, don't shoot the messenger. This is just me kind of just trying to show you why this thing isn't really realistic. If you're going to do this, right, it means that you're pivoting and you're now building around Ketel Marte as one of your pieces. And you're probably going to you're not going to re-sign these starting pitchers anyway. At this point, right, if you're going to make this trade and they're not going to take Cole Young, they're not going to take one of these young pitchers, at that point, you just have to trade one of Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, or Bryce Miller, which obviously, you're not going to do. And then at that point, right, those guys' value are more, especially with the club control that they have, multiple years of club control on all of them, 2 for Gilbert, 3 for Kirby, 4 for Miller, I believe. Then at that point, AZ owes you another piece. And it does it make sense for them to be going all in to try to acquire one of these pitchers with Ketel Marte and having to give up another piece to do it? Now, we're not going to do, they wouldn't take Luis Castillo and Cole Young. That just costs more for them. Luis Castillo already costs $20-something million a year, like $22 million a year. as opposed to Ketel Marte costing $19 million a year. And anybody, we can all agree that we would rather have Ketel Marte. However, and we're kind of giving them Cole Young at this point to take on more money in Luis Castillo, but not to get a better player. And then Cole Young, he's on the books through 2031. So the option in all of this, right, is to build for the next decade and keep Cole Young, which is not sexy. The right answer is not always sexy, but that's probably what the Mariners are going to end up doing, especially considering you have these three pitchers. And as these three pitchers come up for contract, these three pitchers, the idea, right, is that those three pitchers are going to work their way into the rotation and hopefully be good as well, as you can't keep all of these three. And then Brian Wu, we're not even putting on the table, right? Because he seems like the most special of all of them, and would be the one that you for sure want to try to keep. Now, they wouldn't take that one. You can't trade Gilbert Kirby Miller without more from AZ's side, right? And you would kill chemistry and hearts that way. You destroy the clubhouse by trading one of those guys. You destroy fans' hearts. You're probably just not gonna do that. This is a game of pickle, and I don't know that we want to eat it, right? But maybe we do. Maybe we find a way to get one of these trades done. My question to you guys, do you think that this first trade package gets it done? One of these pitchers and Cole Young? Because if it does, again, we might have something here. And then we can worry about re-signing these guys when we get to it. The other option, right, we make it to the World Series, or we even win the World Series. Knock on wood, right? And I just got to say, because I haven't said it enough, want to know every pitch, stay stoic, and all glory to God. Because, if we win the World Series, if we go to the World Series, we make a little bit more money, maybe, just maybe, right, we can get up into that upper echelon of spending and just find a way to get into the top 10 of spending and keep all these guys, or keep two of these guys, right, something like that, and get Ketel Marte, and then it's just the best, the most investment in the Mariners team you've ever seen, the best Mariners team on paper probably that you've ever seen. But that requires us to get to that point first, and to make a whole lot more money first. This year, if we sell a whole lot more tickets, I'm not going to tell you guys, right? Nobody's paying me to tell you guys to go pay more to the team to buy tickets. But, if we sell at the ballpark, right, the enthusiasm is there, which we do authentically and organically. I'm not telling you guys to go spend more money at the ballpark. But if they sell out games, maybe we make more money, maybe they reinvest into the team. This certainly with the Naylor deal, this is the most reinvestment into the team we've ever seen. It's just that what's going to happen here is something that's unprecedented for what's been a smaller market spending team in the MLB. But who's to say that we're going to be a small market forever, right? Who's to say that we're not a big market? Even if we don't have the TV deals that LA and New York have, and I don't want to get too into that. I'll talk about that's another video for another day. And then there's just some other news I want to go through. Willie Castro getting interest from the Braves, Pirates, and Rockies. Two teams that are not going to be competitive likely in 2026. And the Braves, who, it would take Ronald Acuna MVP season to do so. The thing is, he's last 245, 335, 407 with the Twins, right, in 2025. Then it was sent to the Cubs at the trade deadline. He hit 170 with one homer, a less than 500 OPS for the Cubs. Didn't have a plate appearance in the postseason. So I know I've seen people throwing out the name Willie Castro as a bench bat for the Mariners to go get. The fact that he didn't have a plate appearance in the postseason, he didn't seem very useful. And he got a whole lot worse at defense too. I think that Leo Rivas can be just as useful, fits the chemistry of this team more, and is so much more value proposition wise. I'd rather just keep Leo Rivas. Let's not go break our back to get Willie Castro. More Michael King suitors. All the biggest markets are in on Michael King. There's a report today. Who's one of the best, and most underrated pitchers in baseball the last couple of years. He's the only reason that he's not getting the buzz of like a Dylan Cease is because Dylan Cease is durable. Michael King is injury risk, for sure. But Michael King suitors, the names that I saw thrown out: New York Yankees, Boston Red Sox, New York Mets. I expect him to land a pretty decent deal. And man, if it works out for him, it's high risk, high reward at the highest level. It's, if he pitches, he's going to be awesome. If he gets injured, then you're paying for a product that's not on the field. But I mean, that's just going to be an interesting one. He's a pretty polarizing pitcher right now, and that's an interesting one. The Dodgers are, we're in on the trade market, making some calls, but they're not materializing, which just makes me laugh out loud because they're already really good and they're like their own players. It's like when people try to trade you in your fantasy league when you're already doing well. And it's like, well, I like my players. I'm not going to just make deals with you just to make deals. I'm always open to talking about stuff. There's always room to improve. But the Dodgers GM, Andrew Friedman, the president of baseball operations, the GM for them, Brandon Gomes, said Monday that there's not as many clear paths to make the team meaningfully better. Yeah, like bingo, right? It's just funny. I mean, obviously, ways to upgrade their outfield and fortify the back end of their bullpen. Of course, everybody needs bullpen help, especially the Dodgers. The Dodgers didn't have necessarily a clear alphas in the bullpen. Didn't have the best bullpen. But not everything can be perfect, right? Even with the Dodgers. Then outfield-wise, it's like, I mean, they have Andy Pages, Teoscar Hernandez, guys who, Andy Pages has a good arm. Teoscar Hernandez has a bad, somewhat mediocre defense. Although I always thought he was underrated here. He's years older now. And there, I mean, he's just not, doesn't have that type of range. I don't know. I mean, it's just like you can't really make trades with people in your fantasy league at some point, right? In fantasy, fantasy football, fantasy baseball, because it just doesn't. There's just not a perfect trade scenario that matches up, and that's where the Dodgers are at. You can always get better, but there's not always a way to do so. That you can find out. Anyway, then Kyle Schwarber he's expecting a Phillies offer. It said Monday or Tuesday. Now it's Tuesday by the time you're going to be seeing this. So Kyle Schwarber offer on the table from the Phillies expected today. That'll be interesting. That'll be a big that'll be big for him. Because Cincinnati Reds, his hometown team, are rumored to be really making a push for him. They could make a push in the NL Central this year, especially with him. So that's really interesting. And then the Red Sox also want to bring him back. There's some interesting stuff there. So that's just going to be interesting to see what happens. And we're expecting that Phillies offer anytime now, today. Hoping that I go to bed and see some interesting news when I wake up. Then Pete Alonso is likely waiting for Schwarber. Is another thing that I saw. And the Red Sox, who have made it obvious that they want to get a righty bat this offseason, are likely the big team in on Pete Alonso, but they're probably going for Schwarber first. So this Schwarber Phillies offer should help him make his decision, which will start really setting the dominoes off in the hitter market. And Pete Alonso, waiting for Schwarber. Again, I said it was a pipe dream yesterday. It's a total pipe dream. The Mariners could even sit with Pete Alonso and discuss this because Scott Boras is his agent, and rightfully so. The Mariners are very, very team friendly in their, they're very team friendly in their operations, whereas Scott Boras is completely on the player's side and doesn't really care. I mean, as both of them are just extremely good at their jobs, in my opinion, and that's why they don't see eye to eye. All quiet on the Tucker and Bellinger fronts. Both Kyle Tucker, Cody Bellinger, haven't heard anything this offseason about. And will news pick up on Kyle Tucker this week? That's something interesting, but I want to give a second shout out of the video to Marine Layer before I cap this thing off. Because being down there at the Mariners at the winter meetings, I was talking to Colton on opening day when I had done my first video, in years on this channel, really my first video about the Mariners, since 2020. And, I met Colton from Mariners Mojo, and I told him, Marine Layer, it's awesome that Lyle's on 710, and he agreed with me. He's like, yeah, he is trailblazing. He's paving ways for Mariners YouTubers and for Mariners YouTube as a whole. So shout out to Lyle for that, But also, they're acting like they, I've been critical of their, they were disappointed with the Devin Williams news, that we didn't get Devin Williams. There was another big reliever that I can't remember. But they've been acting like they want us to get, that we should be in on every big free agent, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense based on our traditional habits of spending, and they're acting like they expect the Mariners to spend like a big market, which sends an extremely positive message. It's good for the organization and it's good for the fan base. And so shout out to you, Marine Layer. They've had some stuff this week. I saw Lyle's video where he's like, Kyle Tucker, that's the one thing we're focused on. We're not leaving without him. He's been pushing the Kyle Tucker stuff for the Mariners to sign him this offseason, which I know, he's always wanted Kyle Tucker. It's just a player that he's always liked to see on the Mariners. And it's like, it's good for the organization. It's good for the fan base to dream big, have some optimism, and, act like, hey, why not, right? Even if, there's all these logical reasons why not that I'm kind of picking apart and stuff. It's like, let's dream big, and it's good for the it's good for the fans to see that. It's good for the organization to have that type of outward, pressure on them. And with that being said, I will see you guys tomorrow. If there's any breaking news, be covering it right away over here. And if not, then I'll be doing another recap like this, kind of reviewing the winter meetings. Let me know what you think, first of all, Polanco and everything. This is kind of the first time we really focused on Jorge. So let me know what you think of the whole Jorge situation. There's really not anything too much to debate, because it's, there's a reason we can't sign him to a more than 2-year deal. And there's a reason he wants more as well, obviously. Whereas, I also want to know, do you think that this trade package has any chance of getting it done for Ketel Marte? With that being said, I will see you guys tomorrow, or really later today. Go M's.